Okay. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Cynthia McDermott,
My name is Adam Fletcher.
and we're delighted to have you join us this morning so we can talk about something near and dear to my heart, which are books. Right, Adam?
We love the books, Cynthia. We love to hold them and touch them and read them and play with them and throw
That's
them
right.
and
That's
treat
right.
them well in the whole 9 yards.
That's right. So I'm wondering if we have a chance to get to know who's here. So would you like to put your name and your affiliation in the chat so we can see who's here?
Just a quick note. Vanessa said good morning. Good morning, Vanessa. Hello, Nicole. Nicole greeted everybody. Rolando said good morning. Rolando's a student from Rio Hondo College. Thank you, Rolando. Anybody else? Drop your name, drop your hello, and give us a little bit of information about yourself. Why are you here today? What do you hope to get from the workshop? Anything like that.
That's
Drop
an
those right
important
into the chat.
question.
Yeah.
I think this is day 2 of the conference, if I'm correct. So
Off and
folks
rolling.
may have done some other things.
I see in our participant bar that Emily Hernandez has joined us. Hello, Emily. Uh, Helen, I'm going to say your name wrong, but I tried. Uh, Nicole is a student from Cerritos College. Emily's a student from Rio Hondo. So awesome. Very cool. We got good representation. There we go. Thank you. I wish that, Juan, if you want to, could you unmute yourself and say your name for me so I don't say it wrong? If you want to.
And
Han. Thank you. I appreciate that. Uh, so Han is from Cerritos College. Vanessa is from East Los Angeles College. So good representation all over the area. Today, I am joining you all from Portland, Oregon, just outside of Portland. And Cynthia, where are you at today, Cynthia?
I'm in good old Los Angeles,
Good old LA.
good old LA, with no sun today. So those, the woo woo headed to Eugene next month. Oh, Eugene's beautiful.
It'll be green and waiting for you, Nicole.
Yeah.
I'm actually shivering a little bit. I'm in my backyard cabin and my arms are getting cold. So imagine, if you will, cool weather.
Well, that's what we have. We have cool weather, and then they say it's going to get really hot by the end of the week. So it's very crazy, and all the plants are blooming, and they're very confused. And we
Real,
actually had a little rain last week.
real hot here would be 80 degrees, and we're not getting anywhere near that
Yeah, exactly.
for a month.
Well, maybe we should move on, Adam. What do you
Let's
think?
do it.
Oh, okay. All right. So about 15 years ago, when I was the Department Chair of Education at Antioch, I started a Horace Mann Upstander Award. And you can see on the slide, there's a picture of him. He was the founding president of Antioch College. This is a guy from the 1800s, so he looks very stern. I guess they used to take pictures and make everybody look very stern because it took so long to develop the picture. If you moved, you'd have not a very good picture. So he looks very stern, but he was supposedly a very lovely man, very, very active anti-abolitionist. So anyhow, so what's the award for? It's designed to encourage young readers to be activists and to engage their rights. And I thought that this award would be important because so many of our young people get to read about Martin Luther King and Indira Gandhi and all these people who have these huge personalities. But what can an individual do as a kid? So here's our little slide about Horace Mann. Interesting stories about him. He was given the opportunity in Massachusetts to be the secretary of the Massachusetts Board of Education, which was an entirely new title. No one had ever talked about that before. He got on his horse and he decided he wanted to find out what the schools were like in his state. And he found some nice schools in richer communities. And then in some communities, he found schools that were in mud huts and some communities that didn't even have any kind of school building. And so he's a hero to me because he started convincing people that they should pay out of their pockets to support public education for all children. That's a pretty big deal because a lot of people still to this day say, well, I don't have any kids. Why should I pay for education for the kid down the street? And sadly, right now, we're watching all the defunding for education. We still have people who believe that they don't have any responsibility for all of our wonderful children. But that's why I started the book award, because I wanted kids to be thinking about how they could make a difference as an individual. And that would be important. I want to call your attention to Adam Fletcher's work because Adam has been working all of his career on student engagement. And Adam, would you just say a little bit about that? And maybe we should throw your website into the slide as well.
Yeah, so the reason why I'm involved with Cynthia on this specific piece around the award is that this idea that young people have something to not only learn in schools, but to actually do with it. And our democracy demands that action. But for so long, so many teachers and parents haven't shared that vision for what students can be doing. But in the meantime, we have these authors who are out there kicking butt. You know, they're writing these powerful, inspiring, big stories, and they're really doing that piece of luring students into learning in a powerful and meaningful and substantial way, but not just learning for the sake of learning, but learning for the sake of doing. So for 25 years, I've been working with schools and districts and state agencies across the United States and in several other countries, all focused on this idea that students should be doing work to transform education, not only as a process, but also as a structure, and that students should be doing work to change the world. These gigantic, huge issues that we know of today, the things that matter the most to all of us, they matter to kids too. And oftentimes books are the gateway that young people are using to walk through and get that passion, get that engagement instilled in their hearts, but then get the action built into their minds. And I love the idea of the Horace Mann Award. I love the books that Cynthia and her crew have chosen in the past because they've actually changed kids' lives. They've changed their hearts and minds and driven a lot of young people into really meaningful action. So acknowledging these authors, these writers, and the illustrators behind the work, and just really shining a light on their work, I think is so important. And it's so important to put students into that position where they can not only be inspired, but actually do more with what they're learning. I'm also really glad that all of you are here, if only because you're going to continue this work of taking these books and putting them to action.
Okay. So as a follow-up to that, thank you, Adam. Would each of you put in the chat what you're doing? Like what's your connection with children right now? Or why did you decide to come onto this conference? Because I'm making an assumption, and those are very dangerous things to do, that most of you are planning to do preschool work, or you're working in preschools, or that's at least where you're heading, or maybe you're working on your teaching credential. So could you let us know? Maybe we could just, Adam, should we just unmute everybody and let them talk with us and tell us briefly what they're doing?
They can unmute themselves, and let's just make an open floor. There aren't very many of us here in the room, so let's just make an open floor. Feel free to unmute yourself and say out loud what are you doing, and why did you join the conference? What are you hoping for? Anybody at all? And if you don't want to talk out loud, that's cool. Just drop it into the chat and I'll read it out loud. So I'm going to type the prompt in here. What are you doing and why did you come to the conference? Feel free to unmute yourself and just speak up. Or type your answer.
My name is Tia Jones. I'm currently feeding my 1-month-old right now, but something that I am doing is currently going back to Cal State Bakersfield to get my second bachelor's degree in sociology. My first one's in child development. My future goal is to be a counselor for young children and adolescents. And I like to read, so that's why I came to this conference.
Good. I use the expression bookaholic.
Thank you, Tia.
Thank you very much.
All right, in the chat, I want to know what books to read myself and in the future in my future classrooms with my students. Another person said, I'm looking forward to being a preschool teacher because I enjoy working with children. Very awesome. Here's another one. I've had some amazing teachers who have inspired me to become an elementary teacher. Very cool.
Hi, I can share. Hi, Cynthia. Hi, Adam. How are you?
Hi.
Good to see you. My name is Marini Smith, and I am a teacher. I am an instructor at West Los Angeles College. I teach child development and education classes, and I think books are very powerful. Of course, I love Cynthia. Cynthia is amazing. You've inspired me over the years.
Thank you,
Um,
dear. Nice to hear you.
Thank you. So, yeah, I love this topic. I think it's amazing. As a child development and teacher education faculty member, I think it's so important to shed a light on the power of books and literacy, particularly finding Sheroes. Students need to find inspiration in stories. They need to see themselves in stories. I teach particularly teaching in a diverse society class where students they get to create their own multicultural children's book. We also do a lot of analysis of books and we look for representation in books. We call it a book tasting where they actually analyze different books and look for different um, images. They look for different aspects of representation. They can look for different isms that are present in the book or books that show more inclusion and show more diversity, et cetera, in lots of different ways. Diversity comes in lots of different forms. So this session is particularly important for me. I also have children. My older son loves to read. And as a Black boy, it's important for him to see himself in books and to just continue the joy of reading because it's so powerful. Reading and words are so powerful. It opens up new worlds to students and not just the learning aspect of reading but just the emotional, the power of words and the power of reading. So this is particularly important to me. So I love this topic and thank you for sharing it with the students.
Not a problem. Listen, take my email. You want to invite me to come to your class? I'll be happy to come.
Oh, that would be awesome. Hi, Nicole. Good to see you. Yes. So this is such a treat, everyone who's here.
Yeah.
Giovanna jumped on and said, I'm an undergrad student majoring in child development and aiming to get PK3 credential. Very cool. Marini, just quick note to say thank you. It's so awesome to hear your voice and to have you share what you did. And it really shines a light on this reality, right? This is more than just a book. This is a tool to change the world. Books are huge things. So
Absolutely.
yay. Cynthia, you ready?
I'm ready.
Hey,
You want to cue this up for us?
Sure. What are we talking about?
This is the video.
Oh, that's the video. All right. So I have a pile of books here. So we've done the award for 15 years, so we have quite a few books. But one of the books that did not win an award is The Arab Bullies of Liberty Street. But this was the book that inspired me to think about the award. So at one point when we did the award, we also had a Lifetime Achievement Award, and Sam Swope, who's the author of this book, is the winner of that award, the Lifetime Achievement Award. So as you read this book, think about the current status we're in with our current administration and their attitude against DEI and all that good stuff. And rather than me reading it, I picked a reader who's going to read it to you. So sit back. We got about 9 minutes to hear this wonderful little book. And fortunately, the book is still in print. Sometimes books go out of print. And also, they made an opera for the book, so you could play the opera for your kids as well. This works, I think, preschool to adult. That's the value of being able to use picture books. So Adam, go ahead and play it. If it gets too long, we'll just shut it off. But the ending's really important. Okay, here we go.
I'll just say really quick before I hit start. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, considerations, anything as we go along, feel free to drop them right in the chat. Cynthia and I will keep an eye on that. And yeah, here's the video.
Okay.
The Kinderteach presents the Arab Bullies of Liberty Street, written by Sam Swope, illustrated by Barry Root. Once there was a street called Liberty Street, and Liberty Street was lined with white houses that were so much alike it was difficult to tell one from another. This was just the way Fat General Pinch and his skinny wife liked it. The Pinches spied on their neighbors all day long. They had nothing better to do. They hated anything that looked like fun. They got upset when Joy hung upside down from a maple tree. They got angry when Katie crept around like a tiger. They got furious when Jack spun around until he felt dizzy. And whenever the Pinches got upset or angry or furious, the general would grab his bullhorn and shout, and the fun would have to stop right then and there. When summer came, the Pinches ordered the children to stay inside. The kids were miserable. So were their parents. But what could they do? Everyone was terrified of the general and his army, and orders were orders. The children had to stay inside. It was a lonely time. General and Mrs. Pinch smiled nasty smiles and stood proudly at the windows, keeping a sharp lookout for fresh trouble. Tulips growing, robins building nests, that kind of thing. And whenever the Pinches saw anything they didn't like, the general would haul out his bullhorn.
I don't know why that's not coming through. The quote is, I'll call in the army.
And quiet. You had to give the Pinches credit for that, but you never heard any music or laughter there, or saw any toys or happy children. It was a sad place, and that made the Pinches very glad. Then one day the Arab bullies came to Liberty Street and moved in next door to the Pinches. They gave the general and his wife a lot to look at. For one thing, there were dozens and dozens of them. Children's and moms and dads and aunts and uncles and grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-great-grandparents. For another, the Arab bullies had pets. They had anteaters and porcupines, elephants, walruses, and sloths. They even had a walk, a few papalocks, and a wild marumpus. Mrs. Pinch sucked in both cheeks. She hissed. Boomed the general. But that didn't bother the Arab bullies. They didn't speak English. They didn't know what those Pinches were screaming about. Now, the Arab bullies came from an island far away where people are born with colorful skin. Strangely enough, however, the Arab bullies were never the same color from one day to the next. For example, one day grandfather Arab bully might be orange, Auntie Arab bully blue, and baby Arab bully pink. But Gramps could just as easily have woken up yellow, Auntie green, and baby purple. You just never knew. At night, the Arab bullies glowed in the dark. Squawked Mrs. Pinch, stomping
That
her
word was
feet.
revolting.
Bellowed the general.
I'll call in the army.
Improvement the Arab bullies made to their house was to paint it with red and white zigzags. They decorated it with flashing colored lights and hung toys from the trees. Then they drew jungle scenes on the sidewalks and poured sand on the grass and made sand creatures. The Arabulis weren't the neatest people in the world, truth to tell, but they sure knew how to have fun. They put their furniture all over the yard and lived outside. They played outside, ate outside, and watched TV outside. The Arabulis even slept outside, all cuddled up like puppies in the biggest bed you ever saw in your life. They snored like crazy. The animals lived inside, in the shower, in the sink, under the stairs, and in the chimney. They ran all over the place. What a racket they made.
Adam, can you stop that for just a second? Yeah.
Yep.
So I guess the next question I would ask as the kids are reading the story, or as you're thinking about it, is, well, what's going to happen since the general keeps saying he's going to call in the army? So think about how the book's going to end. Okay, Adam, thank you.
Screeched Mrs. Pinch, shaking her bony fists in the air, and you can guess what the general hollered. But no matter how much the Pinches screamed, the Arabulis didn't pay any attention. They were having too much fun. General and Mrs. Pinch were miserable. All this happiness was making them sick. Things were getting out of control. Why, before they knew it, all the children of Liberty Street were outside playing Bula Noola Ball.
This has got to stop.
Shrieked Mrs. Pinch, her eyes popping out of her head. Just then, Joy clobbered the Bula Noola Ball. It went up and up and up until, oh no, it crashed through the Pinch's window and smashed into the general's stomach. Pow! And knocked him flat.
Ow!
Ouch! Roared the general. The Pinches were out in a flash.
This means war.
Wailed Mrs. Pinch.
I'm calling the army.
Cried the general, and he whipped out his walkie-talkie.
Come in, army.
Attack! Liberty Street!
Attack Liberty Street at dawn.
The Pinches stormed home and slammed the door, but not before their cat Naomi had escaped and gone to the Arabuli's house to live. The Arabuli smiled and shrugged, but the rest of Liberty Street was in a panic. The army was coming, doors were locked and blinds were pulled down tight. Everyone was terrified. Everyone, that is, but Joy.
Those mean old
Those
pinches.
mean old Pinches, she thought. When their army comes, they'll take away the Arabulis. Well, I won't let them. I won't. And so she thought and thought and thought until she had an idea. She waited until night came, and then, when the parents of Liberty Street were asleep, Joy tiptoed outside and sneaked around Liberty Street, waking the other children and telling them her plan. What a neat idea, they said. Because there wasn't a moment to lose, they all got busy right away. But they had to be very quiet so their parents wouldn't wake up. The children crept down to their basements and up to their attics. They dug through closets and drawers. They gathered together toys and balloons and finger paints. They rounded up scissors and wrapping paper, and they pulled out decorations from Christmas, Thanksgiving, and Halloween. Then they went outside. Some of the children colored the houses and pasted animal cutouts in the windows. Others decorated the trees and painted the sidewalks. They put toys everywhere and dragged furniture outside. They worked all night long. The last thing they did was to paint one another's faces. The Arabulis snored through it all. It was almost dawn when they were finished. Liberty Street had never, ever looked wilder or more colorful, and the children were very proud. Before long, they heard the angry rumble of the army approaching. The ground shook. Soon there were guns and bombs and helicopters and thousands of soldiers marching past the colorful homes of Liberty Street. Now, armies, of course, don't think. They only follow orders, and General Pinch's orders were very clear. On Liberty Street, all that's different, he roared from his window. This,
So Adam, stop for a second. I'll reread that line. Okay. So he says, there's a house on Liberty Street that's different. He roared from his window. It's disgusting. Get rid of it and get rid of the weirdos who live in it. Okay.
And so, with those orders in mind, the soldiers marched up Liberty Street, but all they saw were brightly painted homes and colorful people. No house was different. No one was weird. The soldiers didn't know what to do. But when they finally reached the end of Liberty Street, there it was, a different house, plain and white, with a fat, angry man and a nasty, skinny woman inside. Let's them, shouted the army. There's the weirdos. Charge! Ordered the general, and the army did just that. The soldiers surrounded the house and tied it up with ropes.
Not us, you idiots, squealed
Yeah.
Mrs. Pinch. I'll call in the army, cried the general.
But the army was already there following orders. And so it was that the Pinches and their house were yanked from the ground and dragged far, far away as the children cheered and the Arabulis waved goodbye. And the terrible Pinches were never seen on Liberty Street ever again.
The end. So a few reactions, I think more. When I picked this book 15 years ago, it was relevant. Now it seems even more relevant. They take the Pinches to Venezuela. I'm sorry, I'm being political. Any comments from you folks about the book?
Again, feel free to unmute yourself and speak right up, or drop your comments right into the chat.
So the thing that I like about that is that Joy becomes the Shero. She's the one who sees a problem, comes up with a solution, enacts the solution, and solves the problem. Is it the best thing to do? Is it mean? Is it, I mean, those are all things worth discussing. You know, should the Pinches been thrown out of their house? Should they have been thrown out of the community? Were there other ways to manage that conversation? Could there have been some kind of negotiation that occurred? So it's a piece of fiction.
One person
Go ahead.
One person says, wow, that's a great story. Another one says they rescued the houses on the hills. Let's ask that, Cynthia. What did people take from the story? What did you hear in it? What was the main point of the story for you? Cynthia just explained one perspective. What are yours? Vanessa, what do you think? What's the main perspective in this story? What's the moral of the story, or the viewpoint, or any parts of that? Any thoughts? What's the main idea of this story? Anybody can speak up or just drop your thoughts in the chat. Vanessa, Rolando, Nicole, Giovanna, Emily.
What about community?
Tell me about that, Tia. What did you get out of the community part of it?
My baby is just being fussy, but more like how they came together.
How they came together. Love that. Thank you. Other thoughts?
So as we talk about a few other titles this morning, because we only have another half hour before we're going to go, I want you to think about how that book encouraged me to think about how to choose the award and what kind of characters in the stories were we looking for. And when I write letters to publishers every year to say, here's the award, please send me books about individuals who are standing up, you know, for the rights of individuals, I often get, as I said earlier, like books about Martin Luther King and books about, so I ask them for fiction. You know, I want the stories to encourage, I want the publishers to encourage the editors to pick books that find young people who are heroes and sheroes. And it's actually been a little bit of a challenge over the years because there are a lot of stories that don't do that at all. But I wanted to share a few. We have the website in the links, but it's upstanderaward.org. And I want to say just a moment why I came up with the term upstander. You folks are all mostly primary folks, but in the secondary world, in the high school world, there's an organization called Facing History Ourselves. And they do trainings for high school teachers about the Holocaust. And they have always said that there's a difference between a bystander and an upstander. And I stole the word upstander from them because at the time, Facing History Ourselves is the only group that was talking about upstanders. Now, if you put upstanders in Google, you'll find all kinds of organizations that have upstander awards and whatever. But the whole idea of if you see something, say something, which came about after 9/11, the idea of what does it mean to be a bystander rather than an upstander. And that was the whole point of someone like Joy in the Arab Bullies of Liberty Street. She could have been a bystander. She could have been, there's nothing I can do, but in fact, she was not. So I want to talk to you about a few of the other books that are on the list, but I only brought a few. I brought the primary school ones to talk about today, but the award is for kindergarten through 6th grade. So I do have on the list chapter books that, you know, you'll be more than easily to look at when you take a look. But let's take a look at the next one, which is Violet the Pilot. Now, Steve Green is a professional cartoonist. He works for the San Diego newspaper. And this is his first children's book. And Violet the Pilot is bullied constantly because she lives with her parents in a junkyard. And she's an inventor. And she takes all this stuff that's in the junkyard and makes stuff. And her hero is Emily, who's the pilot, the one that flew around the world. I'm sorry. Anyhow.
Keep going.
Yeah. So she builds herself a plane, and you can see that there are the kids in the neighborhood coming to make fun of her. Turns out that they're a troop of Boy Scouts. And so she and her dog decide to compete in a race. And she's all set to go, and she's flying. She's got this plane. I love this artwork. It's so sweet and fun. She's practicing flying with her dog. And as she's flying to the contest, she's flying over a creek. And guess what she sees? She sees her bully friends, the guys that are bullying her, a scout troop, not doing so well in their whitewater rafting experience. And so she chooses to rescue them rather than to continue competing, because competing is what she wanted to do. These are great pieces of art. The other thing that's great about children's books, and you folks know this, is that, you know, you can teach art from these wonderful books as, you know, another lovely way to do it. Anyhow, she rescues them, She's very sad because she wasn't able to compete, but the community has decided to recognize her courage, the fact that she acted when she didn't have to. They give her an award. She's all thrilled. And of course, now the Boy Scouts like her. Thanks for rescuing us, even though we hated you before and made fun of you. And from that day on, Violet's parents let her fly whenever she wanted, but her mom still made her wear a sweater, which is a repeating line. And so she's in popular science. Adam, I can't remember the name of that. Who's the woman
Amelia
Amelia
Earhart.
Earhart. Amelia Earhart is her.
I put it into the chat just so everybody
Yeah.
can see.
Very interesting artwork in this book. So that's Violet the Pilot. Steve Breen. Okay, who do we have next?
All right, next.
So for those of you doing preschool, this is such a perfect book. The Smallest Girl in the Smallest Grade. So Justin Roberts wrote this book, but it was first a song. And it's about see, it's so sweet. I met him. It says, "For Cynthia, you rock." No, the book rocks. And so wonderful illustrations, very simple illustrations. It says, "Hardly anyone noticed young Sally McCabe. She was the smallest girl in the smallest grade. Sure, her name could be heard in the daily roll call, and she marched with her books down the same school hall, but hardly anyone noticed young Sally McCabe. And they certainly didn't know or didn't least mention that Sally was paying super extra special attention." So at one point, Sally decides that the bullying that's happening in the school is just unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. So I'm skipping through this. So on February 3rd at 11:29, Sally stepped straight out of the lunchroom line. She said, "I'm tired of seeing this terrible stuff. Stop hurting each other. This is enough." And she starts an anti-bullying process in the school and convinces everybody that that's what they have to do. So people remembered and would quite often mention that Sally had been paying super extra special attention and how the world could transform and a change could be made by the smallest girl in the smallest grade. So a very wonderful book about bullying. And when you look this one up, you can find the song on Google and you can teach the kids the song. The smallest girl in the smallest grade. What's next, Adam? This is,
Cynthia, really quick, let me read just a few comments that have come in.
oh, sure.
Rolando had said about the story reading, "I felt the story was about embracing individuality and challenging rigid social norms." That's an excellent observation, Rolando. Later on, Rolando also mentioned, "It seems like some people, not necessarily parents, don't want these types of stories for children in public schools. I think we need more books with these types of themes. I'm glad you are highlighting these books for us to learn about."
Right. No, I think that having children who speak out can be quite uncomfortable for some teachers, for some principals, and for some parents. We still have that adage, children are better seen quiet. And, we still respect and honor classrooms that are quiet classrooms, but children are not quiet people. And being curious and asking questions and wanting to be playful is part of who they are. For those of you that have been doing child development, you certainly know that's in fact the case. So yes, so these are books that can, raise that question. Absolutely. So this, We Are the Water Protectors, is an absolutely gorgeous book. It also, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it also won the Caldecott Medal the year that it was published. We always do the award for the previous year. So right now I'm looking for books for the 2026 award that were written in 2025. This is a 2020 book. And Carol Lindstrom is the illustrator or the author. Water is the First Medicine. So it's really a story about how Native peoples take the protection of clean water and the environment very seriously. The artwork is stunning, which is why it won the Caldecott. And it really is a story about this is what water protectors do and who they are, and we all need to be water protectors. That this is not just the job of some, you know. So here's one that says, take courage. I must keep the black snake away from my village's water. I must rally my people together. So who's the black snake? The poisons of the environment. She continues to say, to stand for the water, to stand for the land, to stand as one against the black snake. So it's an interesting metaphor for the term black snake for those of us who are not native and don't understand, you know, that metaphoric language. We stand with our songs, our drums, and we are still here. We have a tendency. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, the winged ones, the crawling ones, the four-legged, the two-legged, the plants and the trees. So it's a more collective response. We are all related. This gorgeous artwork. So again, it's a book, you know, to encourage us to be involved as a group of people. This is not just an individual, although the main character is illustrated as a child, All right, I think we have one more to talk about, right?
Yep.
This is this year's winner. Mom is Going to March. So the criteria for the award is a book that's written in North America, in fiction, and published in the year. So this book was published in 2024. Jennifer Morano is a Native person along with Vivian Rojas. They live in Canada, and this is published by Groundwood Books, which is a female-owned publishing company. It's been around for a long time. It seems particularly interesting this time of year. This is a Nancy press because of all the marching that's happening. And so this is a mama getting ready to march. We cut a big piece of cardboard and mixed some paint. Will there be bands and bugles, I asked. No, Mama said, it's not that kind of march. We made a sign because, and then down here it says, we march for integrated, and the whole sign is not there. You can use your imaginations. Mom is going to march. She says our laws should protect everyone. Mom is marching for freedom. So then we have a number of different signs. Such a timely book. March, march, march. We march for, we demand equal rights. We march for integrated schools. We demand voting rights. Mama rolled my wagon out of the garage. Will there be balloons and floats? I asked. No, Mama said, but you can decorate your wagon. We dressed in white because Mom is going to march. She says all people deserve to be treated the same. Mom is marching for equality, Kids for ERA. And I love how diverse this book is. Mama gave me thick woolly socks and my warmest mitts and hat. Will there be costumes and feathers? I asked. No, Mama said, it's not that kind of march. We carried a flag, and there's her flag for Peach. And so each page does that, talks about, you know, the marching. When I found this book, the committee was like, oh my God, it's so perfect. Some years we've had not quite perfect books. And then there's a section in the back. What's a march? We made a sign because simple signs are the most effective way to express the purpose. We dressed in white because people wear colored clothing or matching outfits to identify themselves as supporters of a cause. Yellow vests, orange shirts, and rainbow clothing have become historically important. We carried a flag because carrying a flag shows your pride for a cause. We brought our drums. Rhythm is a foundation for prayer, chants, and songs. I made a banner because banners at the beginning of a march identify. So there's an entire section, and then even though this is a fictional book, and sometimes there are author's notes where she in fact talks about some of the major marches that have happened. 1963 March on Washington, 1978 March for the ERA, 2003 anti-war, 2019 global strike. And I guess if she revises the book, she can talk about the hands-off strikes that are going on right now, right? And I love the artwork throughout the book. She hasn't just done it in the whatever. And then, so that's Mama's Going to March. Brand new book, our winner. Jennifer is going to be zooming into a couple classrooms this month to talk with some first graders about the book. If you shoot me an email and you'd like to join that day, I'll be happy to let you know. We don't have the date set yet right now, because we try and get the author to present about the book and record it. So that's what we're doing.
Cynthia, quick question. Just from me, I'm curious from your perspective, with all of the years of teaching that you've had and all of the student teachers who've come through your program that learned from you, what would you tell them? There's so much value to diversity in books, right? And for kids to see themselves in books, whether that is racial diversity or language diversity or ethnic identity or gender identity, whatever identity that young people have, it's so important for them to see themselves in books. But is there a difference between a book that highlights the beauty of somebody's natural hair versus the beauty of a book that highlights the way that a young person puts together a protest and goes and does activism work? What's the difference in those two kinds of books? You know, is there a different value? Is there a different, what would you say to a teacher, a person who's aspiring to be a teacher of kids in relationship to that?
You know, a couple of years ago, a number of authors, African-American authors, started a movement called We Need Diverse Books, because it is true in the publishing industry that many of the folks, the editors, are white, like me. The way it works, if you write a children's book, you write a manuscript, and you send it off to one of the many publishing companies, you really don't know what the publishing company holds as a standard. And many books of diversity perspective get rejected because they're political. They make people uncomfortable. They make statements. That's why we have all these banned books, because people see how powerful a book can be. And so therefore we don't, you know, and if every once in a while I go to Barnes and Noble and, you know, look at the children's books that are on the shelves, and they're very vanilla. Not just in terms of the characters, although now more often you'll see, like in this book, the one we just looked at, you'll see that the author or the illustrator have created more diversity, but it's not necessarily a diverse book. They've just colored in. I'll tell you a quick funny story about that. But so the question you're asking is a very complex one, because when Bell Hooks, for example, wrote her children's books about hair, you know, to help to help white folks understand that hair is a big deal in some communities, it got banned all over the place, Anna, because, you know, the people that were editing the books and looking at, were like, well, you know, the people who save us, particularly today, are our librarians. Our librarians are the heroes and the sheroes in the world right now to allow diverse points of view to be evident. And, you know, I'm sure I don't live in a conservative community. I never have. I grew up in Philadelphia and I never live in LA. I don't know what it's like in conservative communities to have access to any of these kinds of books. I suspect it's very difficult, particularly with the banning that's going on. Florida has led the game of banning books. Anything that has DEI attached to it. And I would think looking at hair is a DEI issue. I think looking at someone in a wheelchair is a DEI issue, depending on how you narrowly frame that. The value of putting books in the classroom and in our homes and in our libraries is to present multiple points of view. I don't know if that answers your question. It's very difficult. I'll tell you one quick kind of story. So an African-American writer and his wife, he was African-American, wife was white. As they were raising their kids, they've now both since passed away. they would take all the books at home when their kids were little and color in characters. So they had kids of color because their kids were mixed race. And the kids, of course, by the time they got out into schools and in their families' home and libraries, they said they confronted their parents and said, but all the other books are white. You know, we're talking about 40 years ago. You know, the beginning of recognition that really it was a very white world with very white publishers. And I think it still is. I think it still is. It's still whatever, but I don't know if that answers your question. Did I hit it at all?
You were nearby it. Again,
Nearby.
it's the juxtaposition of a book about identity versus a book about activism for young people, for children. And if there's a different value to those, if there's a different thing that we should have in mind, right, in terms of using them as teaching tools with kids.
Well, one of the things that I like about books is that they go very many different ways. So Mom is Going to March can be talking about the politics of democracy. Mom is Going to March can talk about family. Mom is Going to March can talk about illustration and how you use illustration. Mom is Going to March can talk about mixed communities. So the value of a book is that it has so many opportunities inside that cover to talk about whatever kids come up with. So today we had an hour. Adam and I planned, we've been telling you what we think. But in a classroom, to show Mama's Going to March, the best thing to do is to put the book out there and have a conversation about it and let it go wherever it goes. Because I don't need to lead. The authors and the illustrators give us a great gift. They give us ideas to play with, and then it's unlimited what we do with those ideas. And so, you know, I just want more books that have great ideas available to them instead of some of them. I mean, there's some real crap out there right now. And these darn celebrities that are writing books, you know, sick to my stomach when I go to Barnes and Noble. I usually go with my credit card to buy books, and I rarely come out with any books. A good reason, by the way, to go independent bookstores.
Yeah.
Um,
So Marini has a question, and then Sarah. But let me say really quick, Marini, you're going to talk first. But there's also some notes in the chat. They're asking for information about the call that you mentioned, Cynthia. So I asked them to go ahead and email you directly for
yes.
information about the chat, and I put Cynthia's email in there. So if you want to know about the calls that Cynthia was mentioning with the author, send her an email, let her know that, and she'll respond to those directly. Marini, can you unmute yourself and ask away?
Yeah, sure. I really, really love what Cynthia was saying and how you opened up the discussion, Adam, with your question. Cynthia, you were saying that it's really great to put the book out there and let the conversation go where it's going to go and leave it open-ended. I think that's amazing, and we would be so surprised, or maybe not surprised, to see where students' minds go and what sorts of ideas are sparked just by them observing. And so much even with just the cover, as Cynthia was illustrating. And I think your question about activism versus identity, I just wanted to share, and I think this is how I interpreted what Cynthia was saying too, is that you can do so much, right? And so I'm thinking how important it is to have diverse books, but you know, where the diversity isn't the main point of the story. So it's not about
Right.
the child being Black or the person being in a wheelchair, but they're just doing everyday things. So the idea that you can have diverse characters doing activism, I think would be a great way to kind of bring those two worlds together, where, you know, you see Mama going to march and, you know, she is not white, and the people that she's interacting with are not white, and they come from different backgrounds and different abilities and different genders. And, you know, that's what activism looks like. It's not just one monolithic type of person that does activism. So that's something that it would be nice to see more of, where there's that intersection of different purposes and different focuses, different forms of representation in those books. And like Cynthia said, I do feel like it's getting a lot better. You know, I have a lot of books that, you know, to some extent represent more diversity. So I do think it's getting a lot better, but as you've discussed, I think, you know, upon further analysis, it might be limited in some ways. And that's one thing that I like having my students do is, you know, even though the topic might seem diverse, or they're simply having characters of color in the book, what are some of the themes and some of the other issues that are being explored? Are there some limitations? Are there some stereotypes being perpetuated? So it's interesting. I think we're definitely going in the right direction, but we still have room to go. That's what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Marini. That's super important, and I appreciate you sharing that. I just want to say really quick that also is a cool segue to just kind of my final question there, Cynthia, for you to kind of expound on a little bit, if you will. The value of explicit messages about activism and changing the world versus the value of subversive messages, non-explicit messages about changing the world and making a difference in your life and the lives of other people. Can you talk a little bit about that, Cynthia? What is a book that's all about Mama Goes to the March? Does that have more effect or less effect, or is it more appropriate or less appropriate than a book about a Dr. Seuss book that could be interpreted as being something that is anti-conformity and anti ... What do you think about the value or difference between those two?
I think the value of having a library in the classroom is to have a diverse library. And so Mama's Going to March is going to piss off people, excuse the French, if in fact you think marching is not right and whatever. And so then have a book that doesn't have that same point of view. So to me, it's always been important to have a very well-rounded library. And that's why our librarians are so important, because they can help you do that. It's an important point. One of the things that I don't like about so many of the new books that are out is that they're so explicit with the message, be nice. And then the whole book is about being nice, or be kind. The whole book's about being kind. And there's no opportunity for the reader to interact with the ideas. And that to me is the most important thing, that there's an open-endedness to the story that allows the reader to bring their own point of view into it. I can imagine that the Arabulis at a military base might not be a very popular book because it's not very friendly to the military point of view. However, there are other books that might be more friendly to a military point of view, and that would be valuable to have as a counter to it. So again, as you call a library into your life as a parent, as an aunt, as a teacher, as a support to a library, as you're a counselor, think about providing young people with multiple points of view so that they can react to the page without having to be personal about it. They don't have to hear it from someone. Someone's not preaching to them. I think we have one last slide, don't we? Some things to do that we came up with.
First, all awardees. Here's the long list.
Yeah.
And again, if anybody's interested in seeing this slideshow, send Cynthia a note and we'll send you the PowerPoint.
Yeah. So here are just some last minute things. Ask your students what it means to be brave. You know, have them write a few words that come to mind, draw a scene, share ideas, read a few stories of children being brave, introduce them to the award, and then start an award in your classroom. Come up with some kind of award. We want to start an award about books about young people saving the planet, or we want to start an award. There's so many awards out there, from the Caldecott and the Newberry at the big level to, you know, I serve on a panel for the Green Earth Book Award, which is all about books that support supporting the environment. And so do get my email, mcdprof@hotmail.com, and send me an email. If you were here, put something in the title line, you know, that says something like, you know, books or whatever, because I get so many emails because I'm getting more and more politically involved. So there's a lot of stuff that gets sent to my email. So Sarah raised her hand. Adam,
sorry for the noise. I'm kind of on campus. Yeah, I actually agree with everything you're saying right now. As a student, I'm not a teacher yet, but I am getting so many ideas from this all these events that I'm attending right now. And I feel that a library is very important, and that especially that March one.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're
and
cutting out a little
really,
bit there.
encourage everybody
Kids
you know
know
to support
mom
our
could do a
library.
movement that you showed. That it, yeah, and I had a professor that always had books in her class and always encouraged us to read. I believe that a library is needed everywhere,
Yeah.
especially with all the bending that we have nowadays.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yes, library funding is disappearing, so encourage everybody to use libraries. You know?
All right. Well, it's 11:01, so we should cut out of here. If you didn't get Cynthia's email address, it's right here on the slide. It's in the chat. Send her an email. Ask for information about the author talking, and send her information. Ask for this PDF of the slideshow, whatever you need. Thank you all for coming today. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, everybody.
I love books.
Thank you. This was awesome. Thank you so much. Great to see you, Cynthia. See you later, Adam. Bye.
Thank you, Rainey. I love you. Miss you.
Love you too. Love you, Cynthia.
Okay. All right.
Bye.
Bye. Just
Okay.
us.
I'm going to hit end here, Cynthia.